Hello again and welcome to another episode of the Franchise Everything podcast, where we talk about everything and anything franchising. And today I'm at the National Franchising Convention, which is put on by the Franchise Council of Australia. And I'm joined by the wonderful Bruce Billson. Bruce,
Glenn,
thank you for joining.
Fab to be in your aura, sir. How are things?
Thank you very much. Oh, things are pretty good.
Yeah,
pretty
good.
Thanks for asking. Now, I bailed you up upstairs after you got off stage and said, hey, do you want to come to a podcast?
Buttonhole, yeah, because I'm incredibly cheap.
You
That's
are
the
very,
thing.
well, some would say others, but so we didn't really even go through, but what we're going to talk about is just the change happening. There's a lot of change in the wind at the moment, isn't it? Regulatory and everything happening in franchising and small business.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I mean, some of it's predictable in that certain government regulations have a shelf life and then they're obliged to be reviewed. That's what's happened with the franchise code. And
that's almost like a 4 or 5 year cycle.
Yeah, that's right. And your listeners would be aware of the Schaper review. Michael's actually in the building, the guy that did that review. And so it sort of checks whether the code's fit for purpose, whether there's any new challenges that are emerging, and whether there's whether they should reactivate the code or zhuzh it in some way. And so that review's been completed. Had a number of recommendations. The government's embraced those recommendations. So a few different requirements around disclosure. There's also a new requirement to have a reasonable prospect of a return for franchisees.
Got a lot of people talking.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
It's a model.
Rightly so.
Look, it's a model that's come out of the motor industry. You might remember with General Motors Holden leaving Australia, and also some litigation around Mercedes-Benz. Dealers, which are franchise, retail-facing car retailers, they caught short by some of those changes and felt quite aggrieved by them. Very interesting example, though. You go to a car dealership, big capital expenditure, and there's a lot of money on the stock on the floor. So there's a lot tied up there. So a unilateral change to that business can have an enormous impact after a very significant investment. So that's where this concept.
And I can see that from their perspective, but I can also see the rest of the franchise industry is quite aggrieved that they're attached to that. So that changed because we're quite different.
Yeah, it's interesting in that you would have hoped franchising done well would already have that notion in it. I mean, otherwise, what are you selling?
Yeah.
Really a franchise is where one business rents their intellectual property, their proven business systems, their economies of scale with group purchasing, their problem solving to another business so they can bring that intellectual property to life and make a good living and, have a good business themselves. So you'd think the prospect of profitability in that transaction's at the core of it anyway. So
to the point of not being scared of it or worried about it.
Well, but also from my point of view, one of the biggest challenges for franchising is when people are franchising a business that's never existed. So you're actually selling vapor. You're selling a spreadsheet.
Selling an idea.
How can that be proven if you've never seen it? Whereas franchising done well, it's a fantastic model of entrepreneurship where people can benefit from others having solved problems they might confront, refinement to their systems, proven intellectual property. So it's kind of an idea that's close to that, but having it sort of laid out as a requirement under the code, I think that's what's caused some people to be a little unsettled. So
what do you see the future for that? Where do you see that going? Because the main challenge with the return on investment discussion is, what's the mechanism? What's the measure? So how do you see that shaping out?
Well, and the other thing too is even in the language, it's not a warranty, it's not an assurance, it's a reasonable prospect. So why we
how
won't
do you define that?
Correct, and that's one of the things that I think the real discussion's been focusing in on. Just what does that mean? Now it's easy to know what it doesn't mean. We know it doesn't mean a guaranteed rate of return, because if you want that, go and buy an annuity.
Yeah.
This is a business. Businesses have risks, whether you're a franchisee or a franchisor, and there's a reasonable prospect of success there is what's being put forward.
Yeah. So is that then, as far as coming to that reasonable rate of return or reasonable prospect of return, is that we only going to truly know that when that's legally tested?
I think so. Because, at the moment, even the guidance, and my organisation's very involved in providing guidance. We're not a regulator. We're not an enforcement agency. We are an ally to small business men and women. So part of what we do, as well as having a formal role under the code as the facilitator of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, we also provide an educative function. And that's something the Schaper review called for. We've been doing a little bit of that. They wanted more. And some of that educative role is actually trying to explain these concepts to have people thinking.
Sounds like you need a podcast.
Well, that's partly it. It could be that. Now, I mean, we are looking at different mechanisms, because one of the things that I think we need to be aware of is that we've got a highly regulated franchise sector in Australia, probably the most regulated in the world. Yeah. But a lot of that originally was built on disclosure, was built on, when the code began, it was an industry-led initiative. The idea was to try and make sure there was full disclosure so that, consenting adults in a commercial relationship were making informed decision-making. Now, it's gone beyond that into aspects of conduct and operational requirements and the like, and there's been some justification for that with some of the poor conduct that's led to, new requirements coming in. But you don't want to get to the point where people who are thinking about investing in a franchise think, I don't need to do my own due diligence because it's so buttoned down, it's got to be okay. Yeah. And that's the risk.
That's a big risk.
And this is the thing where if you're saying, look, there's a reasonable prospect of return, does that mean you don't have to worry about doing your own financial due diligence? I hope that's not what people read into it.
You're suggesting that it's going to send a message?
Well, it should say to franchisors, don't sell a franchise opportunity that's a brain fart. It actually needs to have something proven.
Yep.
It needs to be able to deliver on the promise. It needs to be commercially sound and franchisable. And that often means, put simply, unit profitability and scope for the franchisee and the franchisor to make a margin. Now, if the model doesn't support that, then that's really going to be challenged. But what does it say to a franchisee? Does it say, oh, look, this is a sure thing? Well, it's not. It's a business, and businesses have challenges. They're not. A franchisee is not an inert influence. They are there to bring their own commercial acumen to bring to life those tools, the intellectual property in a marketplace. Some will do that well. Some won't do that well. I mean, we don't want to get to the point where people think of it something other than a business investment.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing this play out over some time and starting to see it come to a head now. There's a bunch of brands out there who I won't name who seem to be bigger brands pushing away from franchising, I think largely because of the regulatory overreach, and they're starting to go, they're running corporate stores as opposed to even bothering with franchising. And I think that's a concern, because people are like, hey, I want to buy one of those businesses. No, you can't.
Yeah. Look, it's interesting because that depends on a certain scale. Because, I mean, franchising can be an effective model for bringing other people's capital into a business to support its growth and expansion. So you've got the tools, but someone else is coming in, bringing, an investment essentially into that business to help with its expansion. If you're a long-established business with nice, strong cash reserves and you don't need that capital coming in, maybe the option of corporate stores
are franchised and then corporatizing the stores and thinking, let's not bother with it.
Yeah, and some of that relates to risk management as well. You would have seen earlier versions of regulatory change where even, say, non-compliance with workplace relations,
with wages,
risks having the franchisor caught up in that. It's accessorial liability, the provisions in the Fair Work Act. That's has a chilling effect where people think, well, hang on a minute, we want these franchise businesses to have scope to bring to life the intellectual property and systems that we've brought in. We don't want to nanny the business too much. So the analogy I use is that, if you're thinking about franchising, you don't want to be Richard Branson and looking at a franchising, because he's wanting to go wherever he wants to go. Let's call that a free-range hen.
Yep.
But you don't want a battery hen either, where you're so boxed in that it's like on autopilot. You want a barn-laid hen that works within the boundaries that the system and the brand has, but gives the franchisee scope to really bring their own commercial acumen and their skills and their own application to bring those tools to life. So that's where we need to land. And
it's a balance. It's
absolutely.
A juggle. I think, from my perspective, I see a lot of potential franchise partners in discussing and seeing all the inquiries that come through our business for brands that we work with make way too many assumptions about franchise brands. Most of the big franchise brands are going to be successful. And that's where we have always had that problem with the lack of due diligence. Peter Knight, for example, the franchise accountant, who's got a wonderful service of franchise pre-purchase due diligence.
Yeah.
He should be, and I say it on LinkedIn all the time, he should be swamped with people willing to pay a fraction of their investment
I agree.
to understand that.
I use the...
I don't get it.
No, look, and that's the worry that I have, is that if you impose a really high, detailed degree of regulatory obligation, what does it say to a prospective investor?
You're safe is what it says.
Well, it does.
Yeah,
and I remember when the Franchise Disclosure Register came out, that was designed to help people make informed decisions. Now, the ACCC didn't want to look after the Franchise Disclosure Register.
Why is that?
Well, because I think they thought, and it's best you ask them, but as I recall it, they didn't want it being an implied endorsement that people on the register were all tickety-boo. So they were sort of saying, look, people might go, oh, if it's on the register, they've got to be okay, otherwise they wouldn't be on the register. Well, not really. The register is a disclosure tool.
It's like saying that ASIC are endorsing you because you're...
on the company register.
Yeah.
So that's changed now, and the Franchise Disclosure Register is heading their way. But that's the thing, that you don't want those safeguards to be a substitute for genuine due diligence, genuine homework. I mean, I use the analogy of, if you're going to, for every $1,000 you're going to spend, put an hour into research. So if you're going to make a major investment, you should do some major research. And that's one of the things that we're really pushing forward in the education resources that we've been developing with the small business and franchise sector, just to make sure that people are asking the right questions, or even, thinking about what might not turn out right. What does that look like? And really understanding not just their opportunities, but also their responsibilities in a franchise relationship.
So as we wrap that up there, and you alluded to it a bit, I'll get it wrong. What's the department? Oh, sorry. What are you heading up at the moment?
I'm the humble Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman.
Sorry.
We do three things: dispute resolution, and that's where our role as the mediation facilitator under the franchising code and other codes comes in.
Yep.
We also play an advocacy function, so we get up and about and collaborate with the small business economy to put to regulators and government and program designers, real grounded, field evidence informed view of what should be happening. And then we also publish research and information. Part of it is better practice guidance.
Yes.
One of which is this expanded range of education resources we've been developing.
Excellent, Bruce. And they find you where? They find
ASBFEO.gov.au. You know the www?
I do know.
For us, it's a website worth watching. There's useful resources there.
It's a perfect way to finish.
It's good stuff.
It's a perfect
Thanks
way
for
to
having
finish.
me.
And hopefully this will be on it one day. Who knows?
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Bruce. Thanks for joining us anyway.
My pleasure.
And that's it for another one of the Franchise Everything podcast. Hope you enjoyed this. Catch you in the next one soon.